Welcome to Breakaway, the minor hockey podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wilbur, founder of the Coaches site. As always, I am joined by Ian Taylor, the executive director of the OMHA. And today, friend of the show, we have Michael Dundas, the OMHA's director of development. Ian, Michael, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm doing great.
Aaron, it's good. It's good to see you. I'm glad Big Mike is back on.
Big Mike.
And I love when we talk. Obviously, we talk hockey, but I love when we get to do a check-in with Mike as we're following along the season. I know there's a lot of stuff that's on our plate right now in terms of where we are at this point of the season and what comes next, and then looking to next season. So I'm excited about this conversation because we're dealing with a lot of change, and change is good, but change is challenging, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So I know that's kind of foreboding, but yeah, I think the timing with the check-in with Mike is really good, and I know you enjoy these conversations too when we actually talk about where rubber hits the road, right? And that's the player experience.
Totally. Well, Mike, I thought we could start here. So typically at the end of the season in whatever sports market you're in, some of the local, reporters, somebody will have like, we're going to provide the report card on the team and how the decor did or all these parts. So if you were to give a report card on the OMHA season, what letter grade are you going to get? And how, and through your lens, how do you is there a category for development? Is there a category for admin? How do you sort of break out those categories and how do you evaluate them?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, big question right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Hard hitting. No, if I was to give a grade on this season, I think from like a pure hockey standpoint, I would say it's been like an A. I think we've done a good job. I would say this is our first full kind of season out of the pandemic. We've got back to full, I guess, normal hockey. We've implemented a bunch of change at the front of the season, which, had its challenges, but I think everyone managed and we're in a good spot. I think the biggest thing to say about this year is everyone's still playing hockey and it's February 17th. And 2 years ago, that was not the case. So I think that's an important thing to call out, is that our entire membership is still currently playing games that are meaningful and impactful on their season. So I think that's a huge change and shift in the way things are happening across the OMHA. We talk about Model Minor Hockey Association, and just like you pointed out, there are buckets, development program, what those philosophies are, how you implement them, what your structure is within your organization, and how you feed that down to your coaches and then to your players, administrative, how you connect with parents and communicate. So there are multiple areas for an association that if you were going to put a full report card together, that you'd have to kind of provide a grade mark to.
That's great. And, over to you, Ian, obviously if you're a part of a minor hockey team, your evaluation of the season, might have to do with, how many games you won or, how you did it at, your tournaments. But obviously in the seat that you're in, I mean, the amount of teams that you're overseeing is in the thousands. What would be the KPIs or key performance indicators when you sit back and reflect and say, these are the things that we're kind of paying attention to or measuring that let us know that things are moving in the right direction?
Great question, man. Okay. First I'm going to say, I thought Mike's answer was excellent. I will say I'm a harder marker than Mike, and you can see why we worked well together when we coach together and when we instruct together. So, which we still do. So I wouldn't get, I'd be a little harder. I think there's still some areas we need to improve. Ensuring players are playing at the right level. That's not just a team selection process. That's making sure our teams are slotted properly. And a challenge with our leagues is moving teams when that's appropriate and how best to do that. So that's one that I think we still have some work to do to make sure, as Mike said, we're giving players the opportunity to play longer. Into March, all teams are playing meaningful hockey. So the word meaningful really, really impacts me in terms of it's got to be meaningful competition too. So a team getting blown out does not benefit either team, right? Or a team consistently getting blown out, and that doesn't mean there aren't lessons in losing. There certainly are, but you want it to be meaningful. So we're having a meaningful competition in terms of length of season, but also in terms of competition, right? And so that's a big one. I think we still have a gap there. Overall success. We're coming through a period of change, right? So change is, even though COVID seems like it was a million years ago, it wasn't that long ago. So we've got the impact, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the impact of COVID. We're coming back from that. So I would say that's been positive. We've had people coming back to the rink. We've had people, back. And again, some of those things we talked about so much, Aaron, the interaction, the social component, the mental well-being, all that good stuff, physical well-being. So there's a check mark, but it's change. We've got change related to the pathways, which we've talked about. So elements that again, the changing the season, so we impact the most amount of people positively, or most positively, I guess. And then I guess the last bit of change is just where we are in terms of, as you said, how do we measure success? So at this point, for us, it'll be, and this sounds very pie in the sky, but it'll be how many kids come back, how many more kids we can attract to the sport. So these are metrics that we didn't really talk about before, quite honestly. So that, that's changed quite a bit too. So that's certainly a big one. And then I guess hand in hand with that is we are talking more and more about the needs and wants of the customer, and it's been a conversation, and you would think, well, why wasn't that a conversation forever? Well, I think it was always a case of, winter in Canada, you sign up and play hockey.
Yeah.
Summer in Canada, you play soccer or baseball.
Take it for granted. Yeah,
whatever.
for sure. Right.
Take it for granted. So I think now we realize, and Michael shake his head here, because this is probably the thing he's heard me say the most lately. We recognize, people have, a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money, and they're going to choose where they spend that, right? So is that going to be in our sport? Is it going to be in a variety of activities? Is it going to be in soccer? Who knows, right? So, so meeting the needs of the customer has taken on, I would say, a whole new, not just emphasis, but a whole new meaning, because we recognize people have, again, a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money, and they're going to determine how they use both of those things. And I think, who are we to say, this is how you should use it? We can say, hey, we're going to provide a great experience. We're going to provide value. We're going to provide life lessons, and we're going to provide a hell of a lot of fun. So that's where I go with it. Right. So that empty that bucket.
Yeah, that's a big one. But so I think with that, what I have come to appreciate through these conversations is that, your customer base, as you describe them, it's massive. It is the largest, and I want everybody listening to hear this. It is the largest hockey organization in the world, the OMHA. It's not even close. It is the largest. So the amount of people that you're trying to make happy or ensure that their kids have a great experience, it's tough. And so I would think that within that customer base, that you have the families or parents that probably stress over their hockey decisions in the same way that families might stress over what university their child's going to go to and how that's going to impact the rest of their life. They're going through that same ringer when their kids are 7 and 8 years old. Then on the complete other side, you've got the families that are like, I want my child to have fun, to do a bunch of different stuff. We also really value doing stuff together as a family. And we're trying to make all that work too. But this is just one of the many things that we're doing. So how do you, when you're making a decision, how do you sort of consider how this is going to impact everybody? Because I'll let everybody guess here. One of those sides is way noisier than the other side.
Well, I mean, for sure, and then throw in kind of rural, more kind of urban, suburban, add all that in as well, right? So your point is a good one when we look at making decisions and does one size does not fit all,
Exactly.
right? But a lot of decisions are made that.
Well, how could they not be though? How could they not be?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. So that's a consideration, So what I think what we've seen, one thing we've seen is probably more than ever, and I think all the factors I mentioned previously we're looking at things that we would never have considered before, and that doesn't make it like, oh, look at us, we're suddenly become enlightened here. It's just it's a realization though, that we've got to be open to different things and trying new things. So Aaron, that's one area where I think we've shown an interest, but also some success in piloting things. So try, if this is an idea and we think it's going to work in this area and it's going to meet this need or provide this solution to this whatever issue it is or situation, let's pilot something. Let's try it. Let's measure it. Let's engage people. Let's get feedback, and then we can decide this might be something that just works here, or we can say, you know what, we can we can carry this out, and this can this will work in other areas, and we've already done the kind of trial and error, and now we can apply it elsewhere. So that's one area I would say I'm pretty I'm pretty excited about us doing different stuff that way, or again, trialing, piloting, that sort of thing.
The Coaches Site is a proud partner of the OMHA, along with many of the top development organizations in the world. The Coaches Site was created to provide hockey's top coaches, leaders, and performance experts with a platform to share their experience and insights with amateur coaches and minor hockey organizations, with the goal of enhancing the development opportunity for all players. A membership includes access to 500 hours of educational videos, a library of over 700 drills, articles breaking down the latest tactics and systems, and our newly released Initiation Skills Series, which provides a video-based development curriculum for the first 3 years of a player's minor hockey career. Regardless of the level you coach, the Coaches Site is going to provide you the ultimate coaching toolkit. Listeners of the Breakaway podcast can save 25% off an annual membership by using the code OMHA when they register. Again, use the code OMHA and get registered today. Well, what I hope that everybody gets out of this, and where this conversation has gone and where I think it'll continue to go, is that as an organization and the leadership in that organization, you're listening. And this isn't like you guys show up at work every day and these things aren't on the same thing that are on your customer's mind or the membership's mind. They're on your mind as well. You're just having to see it through the lens of hundreds of thousands of people and trying to evaluate how to best proceed. And that's not easy. And I would say the other thing that I would add that exists in hockey now that didn't exist before is there is way more external pressure and options that just didn't exist. And as you said, Ian, like before, you signed your kid up minor hockey in the community, and that's the only thing you could do. It was either that or they could play on a pond or an outdoor rink. And I sort of compare it now, like in your neighborhood, if all your family does is go camping, and then you start seeing your neighbors go to Hawaii every year, like eventually one of the adults in the house is going to say, "Hey, like, I think I kind of want to go to Hawaii too. Like, I want to try that out." Didn't know that was an option, but it is. And so, I think we have to acknowledge that there's just way more options for
Sure.
families, and that's not going away. And then that doesn't make it, any easier. I would also point out, before I get to my next question, just everybody listening, remember that all those options, they're out there because somebody's making a lot of money, not a little bit of money. Somebody's making a ton of money off you. And they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart, maybe a little bit, but it's because they're making a lot of money. Anyways, I digress. Michael, with some of the specific changes that you guys have deployed this season, like for example, the pathway, the extended pathway, like how do you sit back now that you've had some time to reflect? How would you say that's gone? And is there any tweaks that you would look to add to it next year?
I think change has been happening a lot quicker the last couple of years with everything. Just it's been, it's increased in how quickly change happens. But I think the pathways as a whole, or the seasonal structure that the OMHA and the OHF have put in place has gone well. I think we've already, there already has been a tweak. We are changing from, and I know we'll get into this, fall evaluations back to spring evaluations, just based on feedback from our membership and the ability to make that work with ice and time of year and stuff like that. And it's just better for our membership and administration of programming to have spring evaluations in place. It gives everyone a little bit of sigh of relief, and it's stuff's not crammed into the end of summer. So like you said, we've listened, and that change is going to happen for next year. So we're going to be back into spring evaluations at the end of this season. But I think from a whole, the pathways themselves, and Ian and I have said this before, like we went through an unofficial pathway season at our last year of U18, just because of how late the season started at that age category. So we started with, a prep phase that happened in late August, early September, but then we had a runway of development before we started playing regular season games, which we found really effective and helpful to our setup. We also were a full minor team and a double age group, so it allowed our guys to kind of get comfortable and settle into the season instead of facing that right off the hop. So it's allowed that. I think it's been a positive for everyone. Just being able to get their skates under them, have that extra development, settle into their team. And now we have a longer regular season, so you're playing hockey longer in the winter for almost the entirety of the winter. When you talk about March 1st now, where in previous years and a lot of situations, teams were ending their season at the start of February or middle of February, and now transitioning to winding down and looking forward to spring programming when there was still 2 months of cold and below zero temperatures. I think it's been
I agree, Mike. And I'm just thinking, like, just talking to teams and players we know, kids we know, who their team was in a tournament in January, end of January, even into February here, where that wouldn't have been an option before because they would have been in play down. So they get through Christmas, still have a tournament to kind of really kind of ramp up before playoff start. So I think that I agree with you. I think that's been a big positive. And Aaron, what I would say is, what we're also going through is this process of theory, and this is my new thing is, we've got theory on one side of the ledger, and we've got, practical implementation on the other side of the ledger. And do they jive, right? And so, I'll tell you, there was no bigger proponent for fall tryouts than me. I thought COVID was a perfect reset. We're going to run them in the fall. We're going to go back to the way it was again. And I say it when I was a kid, but how we used to do it, right? And that's where we were going to land. And the feedback again was extraordinary, and it was across the OHF. It was a collective amount of feedback that just said, okay, we understand the theory, but practically these are the reasons why it makes it difficult. And at the end of the day, what people were telling us was the idea of having kids have a break in the summer wasn't being realized. It was actually, and this might be go back into to your earlier point about pressure and parents and not knowing where I'm going to land, but it was maybe it was a case where it was such an established thing in our area that people couldn't get past it, quite honestly. So the idea being, okay, we've listened and collectively listened, and we've had to go back and state our case to Hockey Canada and say these are the reasons why. But we also at the same time had to say, we're not asking you to change 10 things. We focused, laser beam focus on this one thing. And the skin in the game we have is we got to keep all the other elements in play. So even though your team's going to be picked, it doesn't mean you start tournaments first week of September, or you know what I mean? Like, again, as we used to. That's still, kids are getting back to school. There's still going to be a development runway of, I think it's like 27 days, Mike, something like that. We that's about to be finalized. And, where you can play some exhibition games and a tournament in that period of time, but it won't be first week of school, and it's not going to be, everyone just hits the ground in a sprint, right? So there's the kind of yin and yang of it, and that's probably where we're spending most of our time is matching theory with what's realistic, and then implementing it. That's I would say that's, boy, if we're not talking about that in some way, shape, or form every day, it's
I think that's, yeah, no.
We just are.
Well, listen, so I personally, I think, and again,
Yeah.
I come from a place where it's always been fall tryouts, but I grew up still the same.
Right.
To me, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The spring tryouts has always seemed backwards to me. In saying that, when I hear Mike take me through the rationale, and then Ian, you say, like, here's the process we went through to,
Right.
try it, get some feedback, evaluate it. I'm good with it now. I'm good. I can live.
Right.
I'll put my hand up. I still want fall trial. However, based on recognizing
Me
that
too.
there's a process and that there's a rationale, and understanding that for some people, because it's not just about me, we're all part of a team in some way or another. I'm like, okay, I can live with that. Let's do the spring tryouts,
Right.
and you know what? Let's just, and then I'm going to show up with a smile on my face because I know what was going on behind the scenes to make that happen. So I just think that's really, that's really important. I think the other thing is that, all these big decisions, it's, before you go down that road, to say, like, how are we going to evaluate if this is a good decision, or how are we going to use data, feedback, etc., and try and be really transparent with that, because man, I say this a lot. I just did a presentation for an association out here, and so what we did is we took the numbers, like, sort of per capita from all the big countries in the world, of how many players they produce,
Right.
just because that's the data that's available. And then we focused on a couple of regions. The best region in the world is Minnesota, better than anybody. And they do it ass backwards, right? Like, they don't start their minor hockey season doesn't get going until late October.
Right.
And they don't have, like, any play. Like, it's all community based. They go to high school. They play less games than anybody else. Like, it's so, but they get the best results. So I always look at that and say, okay, we can't ignore that. We always have to look at, like, if the goal here is to do the best job possible, like, let's look at all the data, and let's not discount an idea, whether we agree with it or not, if that's what the information is telling us is the best way forward. So I appreciate where you guys are coming from. Another thing that came up, and you guys have sort of touched on, is just, you talked about how you've extended the season on the front end, but also just with the revised playoff format to extend the season on the back end as well. We're in the midst of that right now. How's that looking? What's the feedback on the new playoff format?
I mean, it's a good one. I think it's mixed. I think I would say, if we're going to be honest, I think it's mixed just based on creatures of habit, and it's the way it's happened for
History.
so long. And this is our second year into it. From our side, like it's a necessary change. We've been challenged to have all our players or all our teams playing hockey until March 1st. That's something that the OHF had adopted and has challenged us with. So based on our critical mass, for lack of a better term, like we can't run series the old way because used to have to start those January 5th to get to a middle of March, end of March ending with two teams in a traditional playoff best of series format. So just based on the fact that we have to have all our teams going until March 1st, we can't pare down to two teams within 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the calendar is. So I think once people go through it, and it's kind of similar to our modified ice program. We had pushback, and people weren't ready or willing to change. Now that they've gone through it and see the benefits of it, I mean, instead we have 45 championships or around there this year going to be awarded. That would have been 90 teams. We are going to have over 390 teams participating in championship weekends over 4 weekends this year. So that just shows you how many more teams are going to be participating in championships weekends, end of March, early April, still playing hockey. So I think as families, players, teams, associations continue to go through this new format, it'll become the new normal. They'll get used to it. They'll understand the road from September to middle of March break and what happens after, and it'll be second nature at that point. But change will take time, and I think based on the feedback we had last year, everyone that attended loved it. They had a great experience. They liked that they were playing more teams from across the OMHA in a weekend format than playing a best of series against one team. It does centralize some of the travel. I mean, Ian and I talk about when we were in OMHA playdowns with our younger teams all the time, and we'd be 2 months on the road like, playing series against teams that could be 2 hours away. So
Oh
and that's
man,
like, you
yeah.
know what I mean? So like you do cut down on that travel, and it might be a little further distance on one weekend, but you're not doing it over multiple weekends or months of the calendar year. So I think it'll become a net positive. I think there's mixed just because it's change and it's new.
You know what? As you say that, Michael, and that makes a ton of sense. And I've shared on the show, so I've got I'm kind of going through the minor hockey journey from scratch with my little guy. He's 4, and I'm realizing how much it's super fun, but like how much I don't know. But so we go and we're new to this community, right? So I go in the locker room. We're at an age parents are tying skates, and you get to know the parents and what they do and what they do for a living and how many kids they have and how many kids those kids play hockey and what other activities they do. And one thing that's really struck me is that, some of these families, I'm like, how do you do it? Because every game's a road trip for ours. So I look at some of these families, they got 3 kids in hockey and they're driving like the closest game is an hour away. And I'm just like, and every once in a while, like my wife and I will be like, oh, we're exhausted. We got one kid. Like we got, we got nothing to complain about. But my point is just with some of these discussions, when you're talking about the playoffs, it's like, just because for one family might say, hey, we've got the means financially, or we have a job where I can get off work early if I need to. And some people say, well, no, it's no problem. This is easy. It's like, whoa. There's, 14 other families on your team. And as much as they might, for the sake of their kid, they might be making it work. It doesn't mean that they're not jumping through hoops to make it possible and adding a whole bunch of new stress. So I think it's just important to sort of look at it through that lens. So as we sit here today, like what's next? What would be some of the other conversations that you're having in your office about perhaps how some of these initiatives get tweaked, or what might be some of the new initiatives that you're looking at to implement next year?
Sure. Certainly, we've the trial component is probably the biggest thing right now in terms of a um, not a huge change, but I guess significant. And so then it's locking down the other elements of the pathway. So that's something through the OHF, which, you know, our governing body, and the other members of the OHF, to have some consistency. So again, you know, once teams are picked, allowing teams to still have a window to stay on the ice through you know, May and June, basically, if they want to, and recognizing that that could be a window of development, not necessarily, you know, team type of development, but more individual development. Then having a break, and then looking to come back, you know, the last week of August with some kind of prep program, an association hockey school, or even a kind of a team training camp, and then kids getting back to school after Labor Day, and then having that runway of into the season. So I think it's more refining those elements. You know, what our role is, Aaron, is, you know, again, to engage and to have some conversation. You know, when is ice available?
Sure.
You know, when does ice come out for other sports? When does it go back in? What kind of capacity do we have? And so that's a big question. So that's where we're spending. You know, that's where a lot of the pathway, I think, is directed, really refining that stuff. So we're again taking the theory and having the practical implementation, and saying, does this align, and does this make sense? So that's kind of where we're at there. I'll tell you the other one that one of our committees is looking at. This is our representative committee. Is a non-body checking representative league. So right now there's no body checking in rec hockey, recreational house league, local league. Also, something we have is called minor development. It's kind of between house league and rep. And but there's been, you know, we've done at the end of the season, we do a survey out to families, player experience survey, and one of those questions was, you know, is there appetite for a non-body checking but still representative level of play, and you know, what we see is families saying, yeah, you know, they you know, they don't want the body checking component, and you have some players, you know, who are um, you know, representative caliber. They're at a certain level, and they want a non-body checking. They come back to recreational hockey. Well, there's a skill gap there, right?
Sure.
And it's not necessarily good for either either player, the player coming down, or the player who's kind of appropriately tiered, you know.
Sure.
So there's appetite. So that's something, you know, that we've had quite a bit of discussion on, and I see, and we're moving forward with it. We're refining exactly, you know, what category that would be, and you know, again, this might be one of those situations where there might be a couple of pockets of it. It might not be across the whole OMHA yet. But that'll be a starting point, and then we'll get feedback, and we'll again engage both, you know, participants, associations, and then see where that goes. But that's kind of that's I think, again, an interesting one. Listening to the customer, engaging that way, but then they still want the experience, Aaron, of again. Going through playoffs and the opportunity to go to an OMHA championship. But just because they don't want body checking, well, great. You know, we have that. And by the way, that's where we all end up playing, in a non-body checking league, right? Like, that's, you know, we all start in the same place and we all end in the same place. So, so that's an exciting one. I think that's outside of pathways, just recognizing programming demands, and again, listening to what the customer is interested in.
That's interesting. And I think just one of those things that I hadn't, maybe it's so obvious, but just hadn't really considered, is as you talk about all those different pathways and options and ages, etc. What you said at the start is that before you do any of this, you got to sit down with the local associations and say, how much ice do you have? Because we don't play a sport where you just have to grow some grass on a field and go play. Like, it's a big thing. So that really, that's a serious constraint that other sports aren't necessarily having to tackle.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
Before you go to the next one,
Yeah.
Aaron, let me just throw this one at you because this was a great piece of feedback. So we were on a call this week, and we had kind of a cross section of associations participate in a call, and we were talking about tryouts. Again, with spring tryouts, we've talked about that. Starts up after the conclusion of the season. Championships are done. So the first day of tryouts would be a Monday. Okay. So the association comes back and says, can we start tryouts on a Saturday instead of a Monday? And it's like, well, it's just right after championships, so that's the first day, and so it's like, yeah, but the first day of tryouts is typically where the most players come, and Saturday is the day where we have the most ice. So
Yeah.
let's start on a Saturday. Like it's not rocket science, but we needed to hear that voice just because again, that's where they live. They live on the ice capacity and number of teams and number of players we're going to put on the ice, and how can we best serve that, right? And it's like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So that's something we're looking at. How do we do that, right? Without pushing tryouts back too much into the spring, right? But anyway, there's a great example of just what you're talking about, and so we need to understand that because we don't live in that. Like we don't touch that, right? The associations, they're the ones working with their rinks and their municipalities. Different user groups, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and in all fairness, too, I think one thing that I appreciate just from kind of maybe seeing a really broad lens is that the OMHA is very unique, both in its size and the fact that you touch both rural and
Totally.
city environments where obviously in the
Mhm.
big centers they've got like the sixplex rink that's open year round that you've got access to, and then you've got the other
Correct.
community that has one sheet of ice, and it comes out at the end of March every year, and there's nothing you can do about that. And so I can appreciate the complexity of trying to find that one size fits all solution.
So Aaron, we'll have that ability. For some associations are going to say, and they are typically smaller, they're going to say, look, we can't wait till after AAA, AA, goes, and lacrosse is coming in. So they have the ability to run their tryouts in the fall. So it's not, if they can't do it, there's still a provision to do that. So that's the other thing we build in there.
Right.
So there's still a window to do that, because understanding, that's a reality. That is a reality. So we've got to create some parameters around, again, not starting first week of school, but then allowing them to pick their teams, and then still giving them, they'll probably have a shorter development window. If the longest is 27 days, they might be down to 14 days, for example, but they still get 2 good weeks before they go full on into kind of regular season or their first tournament or whatever the case may be. So we have to build both models for sure.
Yeah, I think it's part of that like theory versus application that you spoke to earlier, right, Ian? Like we can kick it around the water cooler at the office of this is the ideal model, but until we talk to people that like have to purchase the ice, have to schedule the practices and games, and they say the formula doesn't work, well then we gotta pivot on things. I think the other one I wanted to throw out is one that is kind of come from the pathway model and the changes at that level, but like the talks and conversations we've been having around frequency based programming versus skill based programming, and a player that might not have the skill level to play on the association's top team, whether that's AAA, AA, wherever, but still wants that amount of ice practice, skill development in their experience during the season. So that's another thing that we've been kicking around that might, we've been trying to encourage our associations to look at on how they can provide those players that might be at a recreational level but still want 3 or 4 times of hockey a week. How can they provide that to their membership? So that's another one, Aaron, that we've been talking about not just on what Ian mentioned, but how can we implement that effectively? And again, it's something that we talk about from 10,000 feet, but then we go and talk to our associations and they say it's difficult. We're already maxing out our ice capacity. How can we get more ice? How can we fit additional skill development sessions in? So it is something we've been looking at, but again, the application might not be quite there, and it might be something that we pilot or see some small test areas before we try and go bigger with it.
That's super insightful, and and I love the fact that there's that development focus. Sometimes I get concerned that it's so easy for associations to say, okay, you've got your ice schedule. Here's a bag of pucks. Here's a whiteboard. Make sure you turn them in at the end of the year. We'll see you later. Like what happens?
They give you the keys to the
yeah. Like you got
oh, yeah.
there's what happens in that 60 minutes of practice is really, really important, right? But maybe probably the most important thing, and Ian, you touched on, like, we're coming out of COVID. It does seem like it was a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago. I think registration in youth sports across the board went down. I think that particularly in our sport, just with some of the demands that it has, it's gone down considerably, more in some areas than others. But where is the OMHA at from a participation or membership standpoint, and what happens between now and the next season to hopefully boost those numbers up? And I just lastly, like, what does a boost look like? Like, what's a positive boost look like in your eyes?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say right now what we've done is we're not back to pre-COVID levels.
Yeah.
We've but we're not declining anymore. So our numbers have actually came back fairly strong last year, and then I would say it's fairly consistent this year. So again, an overused term, but kind of the new normal is being established, less than what it was pre-COVID, but as far as priorities, I mean, we're in the process of finalizing our own strategic plan for the next 4 years. We've been working with Hockey Canada and the OHF on theirs, and again, the reason ours kind of I want to say comes last, but it's not necessarily that way. We just want to make sure we're aligned, and the alignment through all three strategic plans. Although again, that there'll be things that Hockey Canada wants to achieve, say with their high performance program, that isn't on our docket, but on all three, both Hockey Canada, OHF, and us, certainly the recruitment of players and the retention of players is priority one. So that's certainly is aligned. So from there, where we go is we have been talking a lot about, and we've talked a lot about communication here today, but communicating with the family, with the again, the customer being the player and the family, and again, understanding what they're looking for, understanding either what type of information they want or what type of programming they're looking for, but then continuing to talk about the value of sport in general, the value of team sport, and we've talked a lot about the life lessons, the long-term people development was our kind of catchphrase. As you guys know, teamwork, working together, collective goals, overcoming adversity. I mean, those are all those elements of team sport. But where we are right now, Aaron, is we're just talking about, okay, so we talk about the value of sport, we talk about the value of team sport. Now we're saying just, well, why hockey? Well, one, why not hockey? And all of us would say, well, because it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because we love it. So
Hockey's fun.
So I think we got to talk a little bit. Hockey is fun. We got to talk. That's the conversation, we got to have. And Derek from our office, he's got a 5-year-old. He's living it right now. And we're kind of living it with him because he's kind of, I don't want to say he's our test case, but he's in
No, he's
the
your
midst
guinea
of
pig.
it. And Aaron, you are too. And and you are too. You are too. So you're, you're experiencing this with your little guy, which is just pure in itself. But then you've got this, you're talking about everything hockey and where does everything connect. And at the end of the day, your guy comes off the ice and says, "Yeah, that was awesome today," or "I had so much fun," or "Did you see me do this?" And can we go get a hot chocolate or whatever. Or he didn't, if he didn't have a good experience, well, if people aren't having good experience, they're going to find something else to do. But if the kid comes off the ice and says that was awesome, or and you've seen, we've talked about miking up kids, and you've seen that on different videos and stuff, and we need to convey the pure emotional connection to why play hockey. Well, like, why do I still go out and on a pond out here on, outdoor rink, ODR? Because I love it. I love it. So,
Well,
it's that simple,
yeah,
so we're down to that. Sorry. And I'll wrap it up here, because we can talk about all the again, there's all these good things you get from it, and community, and it's great. It's great stuff. But truthfully, I love it. I love it. That's why, there's a hockey game on there. There's, bookcase of hockey stuff over here. Like,
no, it's fun.
It's emotional.
It is. And I like, I'm probably like you guys, like my little guy's being raised in an environment where it's on the TV. It's everywhere. Like, I spent, between breakfast and daycare, I played goal in our hallway for half an hour.
Right.
And it's because it's what he wants to do. But I also look at it. My son gets off his soccer game or practice, and he's really excited about that. He's really excited because he gets to play baseball this year for the first time, and he thinks that's awesome. Ironically, we have a community ping pong table in the lobby of our local hockey rink. He loves ping pong. Like, he's fallen and he's not even big enough to like hit the ball, but he loves it, and he just wants to come after every practice. He wants to go home and watch like ping pong videos on YouTube, and he could watch it for hours. So I think it's like, my point is, like, I think we're in a place with sports now where there's more options for parents than ever. Everybody's trying to make their sport as sticky as possible. Everybody's trying to keep people engaged, and I think that I would view that as a challenge, because on one hand, you don't want the poster that says, OMHA, our sport's way better than every other sport. But you want to convey all the good stuff about it. Well, I think also respecting that, hey, like, maybe, like, do you guys ever talk to like the local other sports associations, say, hey, when are you doing your practice? Like, how can we make sure that families can do everything? Is that ever a conversation?
Oh yeah, we've had it's more at the association level, and we've seen associations, again, try and work that and either a line, or I know I've heard of a few where they were even doing kind of almost like joint registration.
Interesting. That's cool.
But your point's a good one though, Aaron. And again, I love soccer, but soccer isn't telling its kids go play hockey in the off season.
They're getting more 365 too. So is everybody else.
That's what I mean. Totally. Right. So there's no question it is a competitive marketplace, and when it comes down to it, where people spend, they've got a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money, and they're going to decide where they spend it, and it's not going to be somewhere where they're not having a good experience. That's for sure. They'll pivot and find something else to do. Right.
No, 100%. Well, hey, I want to commend you guys. I don't know how many pats on the back you get, but I think just coming out of this conversation, it's I can just sense the care and the commitment, and I'm sure that the feelings that you guys echo or share in here echoes throughout your office, that nobody's putting their job application at the OMHA unless they care about the game and they want to make sure kids have a great experience. So can certainly appreciate the complexity that some of these decisions that for some people might say, oh, this is black and white. It's not black and white, clearly, and it's not because you guys aren't trying to create the best experience, do the right thing. It's just you want to try and do the right thing for everybody, and that's where I think the challenge appears to set in. So this has been a great conversation, guys. Thank you. I think when we
It's
we can
awesome.
continue this on too.
Well, you're living it, so we want to hear that experience too. Mike and I, again, as we coached together for a number of years, but it's important to us that we're still at the rink and we're still engaging with kids and families and obviously our associations. But it's important that we get out and we know what's happening there too, and that's another part of it. Again, it's because we love it. There's no question about it, and we're fortunate enough to work in it. But that's you want everyone to love it the same way we do, I guess. Right?
Yeah. No, and I think they do. I think I always come back to this. I'm like, the good problem to have in hockey is that there is some friction at times, but the reason there's friction is because everybody cares so much. And if there wasn't friction, it would just mean, we'd be, I'm not even going to reference any other sports that maybe are less popular, but I just, what I mean? Like there's some sports that would love to have the engagement and passion that we get to enjoy. So I think that's important to recognize too. But fellas, I know you there's still a busy month or so left in this season. Best of luck to you and everybody that's going through that. Best of luck to all the kids. They're competing for championships, and we'll be back on air in a couple of weeks to go over again.